Thank you for coming for this session. Let me start by telling you a little bit about Prime. Alright, so this is how I'll be looking at this entire structure. Prime, and then looking at SDG into the curriculum, into the assessment task, and how I did it through active learning and industry participation, and some of the feedback that I got back from the students. And thanks to Adina's session yesterday, I tried to accomplish the mapping to our learning outcomes for unit, course, and managed graduate activity. So let's see if I've done it correctly. Okay, so what exactly is Prime? For anyone who's not from the School of Business, anybody here not from School of Business? Nobody ever from the School of Business. Okay, it's Principles of Responsible Management Education. It is a UN supported initiative which was founded in 2007. And it is the largest organizational relationship with UN today, with over 650 signatories. The focus is business and management higher learning institutions, and the whole idea behind it is to try and deliver more responsible business leaders in the future, focusing on sustainability, ethics, and trying to balance the economic side of it to the sustainability side of it. So that's pretty much what Prime is. And we became members, the School of Business became members in April last year, and we set up a structure. And before talking about the structure, the conceptual structure behind Prime, apart from the 6 values, you could see it from the perspective of education, research, and partnerships. I highlighted education not because it's the most important, simply because I'm dealing with the education side of it. And the structure of Prime within the school, what we have is the 3 Prime ambassadors. There's Dr. Justin for partnerships, research Dr. Ananda, and myself for education. And over and above that, we have the Prime representatives from each and every department to help us out and to also be part of the entire the entire structure, right? All right. So now I'm going to look at how I brought in SDG into my unit. My unit is current issues in corporate governance, and these are pretty much the topics. You don't have to go through it one by one. I'll just generally look at it. I look at corporate governance practices in Malaysia and compare it to other corporate governance practices in other countries. These are some of the areas that I look at. Primarily the framework. I look at Companies Act, I look at Capital and Market Services Act, and the focus is pretty much on the Malaysian Code of Corporate Governance, apart from other frameworks. I look at the Malaysian capital markets, the cultural influences, the political economy, and how that impacts corporate governance practices in Malaysia, board of directors, board committees, executive remuneration, as in whether CEOs are receiving remuneration which is so high, and what's unethical about it. That's our concern. I look at the role and independence of auditors, external auditors, internal auditors, regulators, the importance of protecting minority shareholders because they lack the voice when it comes to shareholding compositions in general. Institutional investors, what is the role they play in shareholder activism? How important are they as investors? When you look at institutional investors, you're talking about banks, you're talking about KWSP, all these big organizations. And last but not least, the most interesting one is whistleblowing. Okay, now, this is the current development that I took advantage of for the 2018 semester 1 unit. The Malaysian Code of Corporate Governance 2017, the reform that has come about is that the code requires companies to openly disclose their policies for appointing more women to the board, as well as set targets and measures towards meeting those targets. Large companies are expected to appoint at least 30% women into their boards. Okay, question time. Which SDG is this?
Equality.
Gender equality.
Gender. 5, is it 5?
Number 1.
Not to that extent.
No, number 1 is.
One of
Yeah,
the-
gender
One of the
equality.
17s.
One of the 70G, thanks. So, which SDG is it? Which one?
Well, I thought it was 5. I said 5.
5, yeah, you're right, Prof, you're right. Just pulling your leg. Gender equality, which is SDG 5.
Can also
Now-
be number 10, right? Reducing inequality.
Yes.
Yeah, I mentioned number 10.
No, okay. I don't have it for you, but yay. Okay. So now
But
this
that
is
is
how
something else.
I related that current development to the SDG, and then what I did was let me go back.
Escape.
Escape. Okay. So okay. So then the link brings us to this, which is about the sustainability goals. Now, when I highlighted the SDG 5, I was then able to, give an overview about the 17 SDG goals, the United Nations Millennium Targets, the 2030 Millennium Targets, and all the 17 goals. So then I went into, you look at gender equality. If you look at this, you read more about the goal, you will find here you will find facts and figures, goals and targets. So you can have a look at it on your own time, but when you look at the targets here, what I'm hitting here is number 1, ensure women's full and effective participation and equal opportunities for leadership at all levels of decision making in political, economic and public life. I'm looking at that. What I'm also looking at in more specifically to law and legislation is the last one, which is adopt and strengthen sound policies and enforceable legislation for the promotion of gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls at all levels. So this is directly related to the latest development on the Malaysian Code of Corporate Governance 2017. Okay, so once I did that, then I thought about how do I incorporate this into the assessment task, because I'm already dealing with it. So one of my tasks, I have 3. One of it is a written task, which is 30%. And it's an essay, and the title of the essay goes like this. So it's a quote, all right, which is by John Luca Pletzer, who's the author of one of the reviews, and the title of it is Does Gender Matter? And this is the quote: advancing gender equality and female representation in corporate governance has increasingly become the focus of societal and political debates in various countries. Despite extensive efforts to increase women's presence on corporate boards, men still dominate the corporate world. So this is the quote. So then my question is, with reference to the above statement, using case studies, critically evaluate the success of women directors in the governance of corporate institutions in Malaysia. Does gender matter in the boardroom? In your opinion, to what extent corporate governance standards, locally and internationally, ensure gender equality in the workplace? So it became a more general one, right? Okay. Now, if you look at this question, there are 3 parts to it. Obviously, the first one, you have to look at Malaysian scenarios, pick up one case, and evaluate how successful the women directors are, right? Secondly, does gender matter in the boardroom? This is your opinion, pretty much, right? And the last one, to what extent corporate governance standards, locally and internationally, ensure gender equality in the workplace? So you're looking at rules and standards, local and international. Okay, so I took this one out, okay? And this is what I did. I incorporated it as an active learning and included industry participation in it. Now, the debate is titled Gender Diversity Matters in the Boardroom. That was the title of the debate. Now, what was the aim of this question? Now we had a brainstorming session about it, and some obviously thought that no, we should talk about the quotas. The debate should be about the quotas because we have already established gender equality, and so the issue should be about quotas. Yes, that's one perspective of looking at it. But what I wanted to do is, I wanted my students to question status quo. I wanted my students to reflect. I wanted my students to ask the question, does gender really matter in the boardroom? Because I also think that you need to go a few steps back before you move forward. So yes, gender equality is there, and all these quotas are there. But what about the foundation to it, the ideas behind it, the thought process behind it? Does it really matter? So that's why I picked this topic, gender diversity matters in the boardroom. Now, why a debate? What are the skills that you pick up from a debate? Communication, presentation, analysis, research, presenting your thoughts in a cohesive manner, teamwork, thinking on your feet. So these are all the skills that you pick up in a debate, which was my aim. Now I also found that this group of students expressed themselves well, although none of them had ever been debaters. That shocked me, because I only came to know about it after the debate, that none of them were debaters, has ever even debated before. So, but I decided to, because I found that they could speak. Okay, so this was the structure. I had 30 students, all right? And amazingly, I believe the odds were in my favor. I didn't have to force anybody to do anything, and it just worked out, because the first thing I wanted was gender equality in my debaters and gender equality in the adjudication. I wanted it to be politically correct as well. So I said 3 boys, 3 girls. And instantly, those who volunteered came up to 3 boys, 3 girls. So for the topic, I had 2 girls and 1 boy. Against the topic, I had 2 boys and 1 girl. And all voluntary. I didn't have to persuade anyone. Okay, so then we have the debaters. Now, what happens to the 24 of the rest? Now, I had 24, which was a perfect number again. So I divided them 4, 12, 4 against. Again, this was voluntary. So 4, I asked for a show of hands. I had 12, miraculously. Don't ask me how. So I did 4 against. So once that was settled, then I divided the 12. 4 for each researcher. 4 for each researcher. So I told them, now you have to work with your debaters. All right? Now, how is this related to the assessment, and how are you going to be assessed? Okay, let's look at it. Now, so we had this structure of 2 teams of 3 debaters each side, adjudicated by a panel of judges. So I had 1 industry woman director, 2 academics, and a Monash debater. Now, what about the rest? The 500 to 600 write-up on each point of argument to assist the debater. So I broke it down for them. If you're writing about 600 words, it's only about 600 words, right? So how do you break it down into? What is your point of argument? What is your evidence? What is your example? So I broke it down for them. So point of argument. So let's say you're saying that gender diversity does not matter in the boardroom, meritocracy does. That's your argument. What is your evidence? Do you have statistics to back it up? So, what is your statistics? Then you have your example. Draw an example from what's happening around the world. So this comes up to about 500 to 600 words. All right? I gave them a deadline. They emailed this to the debater, and they emailed it to me. So this became part of the 10% of the written assessment on the part that says, does gender matter in the boardroom? Okay? So they asked me, can I include it in this essay? I said, of course. This is part of your essay, so use it in whatever way you can as critical thought, and once you have an input, use it in your essay. So that's what they did. Now, so what about the debating skills? none of them were debaters. So I got the help of the Monash Debating Society, spoke with the president, and over 3 weeks, each week they had a session for the debaters. They have their normal session every Tuesday evening with a coach. So I got these 6 debaters to attend the workshops every Tuesday evening until the debates. So they attended the debate. So they picked up something. They learned public speaking, they learned confidence, presentation, and art of debating. All right, so that was the structure. Okay. So this was the program, okay? We had everybody from the class involved. The MC volunteered himself, the moderator and the timekeeper volunteered themselves, and those helping out with the attendance and the ushering volunteered themselves. So this was the program. The debate started. Then there was the deliberation by the panel of judges, remarks by the panel of judges, and then we had the keynote address by Cheryl Ho, who's the director at Deloitte. So this is how I brought in the industry participation. Okay? Going back here. Industry participation. Now, I usually find guest lectures boring. Sorry, but I do, because I find it a very passive way of interaction. So I was trying to think of a way, how do I get in a speaker who will be involved in this entire scenario? So Cheryl came in as a panel of one of the panel of adjudicators. And I think it turned things around, because from passive it became active. Because once you have a debate and you have the students presenting, arguing, and that atmosphere is there, the other students feel at ease to want to speak up, to want to have a conversation. So even Cheryl, instead of direct lecture, she was having a conversation with the entire group. So I found a difference there. It became a very active, interactive, engaging session, and not just a one-way session. Okay? All right. So this is the title. This house believes that gender diversity matters in the boardroom. Okay. So here are some pictures. We had about like 60, which was 60 people, which was really nice. My students were there, 30. We also had students from the other disciplines, and we had directors and industry participation as well. Okay, this is the debate. All right. Now, this is the MC, as you can see. This is the moderator and the timekeeper, and these are the debaters. What is very interesting about this debate also, I believe debates have evolved. Now they have something known as point of information. So if the opposition is speaking, I, from the proposition, can ring the bell and say, point of information. Once I do that, the other party has to stop and I ask my question. So that person has to address my question or choose not to. So that brings about thinking on your feet and using whatever you've learned to apply that in a debating style, right? So that was something that occurred a few times in this process as well. Okay. Once the debating session was over, the panel of adjudicators went to decide. Then they opened it up to the Q&A for everyone else. So here you have TP, who's one of the directors from the industry, giving his perspective. You have Dr. T, you have Pushpa, and then you have the students as well engaging and asking questions. All these questions were directed at the debaters. Because the panel was outside. So this was an opportunity also to assess the best speaker, right? So how do we assess the best speaker? Thanks to Education Office and Marvin, we used Slido. Okay, and this is Cheryl, who was giving her keynote speech. This was the feedback that all the adjudicators came to give once the adjudication was over. This is the Monash debating president. And so there you have Marvin, and what he used was Slido. And so the audience decided who was the best speaker through Slido. And you have Chia here, who's also engaging, and I believe you asked a few questions as well. And this was Guess who won? For or against?
Against.
Gender diversity matters in the boardroom. Guess who won? For or against? For. Against won. The group that argued that gender diversity does not matter in the boardroom went on the basis that meritocracy does. And we should not be allowing quotas because we are then diminishing, and we are doing it for the sake of doing it. We are just bringing in women for the sake of bringing in women. Of course, there is counter arguments to all that, but the discussion that took place gave, I think, a very a multi-dimensional perspective to the issue. So this was the group that won against, and this was the group that didn't win. Okay, but the winners got 50 ringgit each voucher for Coffee Bean, and then they got like the lesser half, 25 ringgit voucher. So this was the debating procedure. Okay, now the feedback. What was the feedback that I got? This was via email. This was in purple is the researchers, in black was the debaters. So the debate strengthened or sharpened my research and analytical skills. And you have the debaters saying that preparation for the debate has definitely taught me a few things on research and awareness and public speaking. I think this is also important because they realize that getting too technical does not necessarily mean you're successfully getting the message across. So they're learning the proper way of convincing and presenting information. Use of bombastic and expensive words doesn't necessarily mean people will agree with you. It just shows that you're intellectual, but did you get the message across? So this is something they picked up. The researchers also said, I'm more informed about the importance of gender diversity in the boardroom. And one of the speakers, who's actually from a Chinese background school, who used to debate in Chinese, found that this built her confidence, and she's more comfortable with presentations. So this is through email, but from my C2 qualitative comments, this is what I got. Which aspect of this unit did you find most effective? The assessments provided meaningful opportunity for students to demonstrate their knowledge, application and critical thinking, presentation and debate. Would you suggest any changes to enhance this unit in the future? I got one. No last minute essays required of me, please. So this was the negative side to that entire process. Okay. Then under further comments, the assessment task helped me to develop the knowledge and skills required for this unit. This is the comment. Assignments and debates helped me to better understand the issues we learned in class. Further comments, I was encouraged to actively participate in this unit. So students said volunteering for the debate helped me gain an edge. Also, especially when it came to relating the topics to one another, the essay also helped me improve said skills as extensive research was required, thus it needed more in-depth analysis. So this was the C2 comments from this that I picked up in relation to this assessment. Okay, so now that was the entire relationship between the SDG, the written assessment, and the debate through active learning and industry participation. So based on yesterday's presentation by Adlina, I did this last minute thing of trying to map the assessment to the learning outcomes. So let's see. So the assessment task, when I broke it down into three, was what? Critical evaluation of success of women directors using case studies. That was one. Second one was the research and the debate itself, and giving your opinion as to whether gender matters in the boardroom. And lastly, local and global assessment of corporate governance practices. So, do you think I hit any of the unit outcomes with this assessment?
What is the question?
Do you think I hit any of the unit outcomes
So based on the assessment?
based on the assessment?
Yes, sir.
Which one?
I think
Well,
one.
I'll talk later, I think.
Which one?
No, I have a more fundamental issue here in the whole presentation. So
Okay.
when the questions come, I will talk.
Okay, sure. So, but do you think I hit
Question 3, the unit outcome
Number
for
three.
3.
current issues, right?
Yes.
Okay.
But then if I want to just respond immediately,
Yeah.
with respect to sustainable development, you hit none.
Why is that?
Because the question is, that's what I want to talk later, but because the question is, your focus is simply, this presentation can be done without any reference to sustainable goals. What is so specific about the SDG? Because you did not explain what SDGs are, there were no explanation of these things, and then the links between sustainable goals and things to gender inequality was not discussed. It was not
No, Prof. That I discussed in my lecture. Of course, once I brought in gender equality, like I said in my earlier slide, I brought you to the 17 SDG goals. So when I did a lecture on it, I gave them an overview of what the Sustainable Development Goals are, what are the UN Global Compact about, what are the each goals about, why are we moving towards that direction. That was in my lecture.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
in everything that we showed,
Yeah.
all the debates and all that, I never saw the word SDG.
No, but that
It
is
should be
the
there.
practical
But this is the-
aspect
yeah.
of whatever theory that is there.
Yeah. So gender equality, SDG 5,
Yeah.
is incorporated in my written assessment. And that written assessment is also developed into a debate, part of it. So that is how the link is between gender equality and sustainable development goals. Sustainable development goals number 5 talks about gender equality, the need for gender equality. I'm asking my students to question that, to reflect on that, to think about it. I just took one SDG. I am unable to cover all 17 goals in my assessment. That is quite unreasonable. So I
No, you
picked
can't
out
do that, yes.
I picked out one which was very relevant because of the latest reform to the Malaysian Code of Corporate Governance. So I linked it from the reform to the SDG, to the curriculum, to the assessment, to active learning and industry participation with just one SDG.
Well, of course, I did not see your first presentation part about SDGs because you didn't talk about that
I did.
here. No, it's not here.
I did.
She did.
I did. I did. I'll show you. Wait. See, when I, with all this,
Can go to escape.
here, when I looked at the current Code of Corporate Governance,
Yeah.
this is the reform,
Yeah.
I asked you which SDG. Once I looked at the SDG and I told the students, this is an SDG, so obviously people are going to ask me, what is this SDG? So I took them into the goals. And I also took them into the website, the entire website, to talk about, to discuss, to look at a holistic perspective of the SDGs. Okay, so then, coming back to the mapping. Okay, so unit outcomes, I believe the least would have been this. Although there can be an overlap. What about the course outcome? Do you think I'm hitting anything?
Before that, I think even number 1 is addressed
Yes.
because you brought in the
Yes.
industry people,
Yes.
the academics, and the industries. You know?
Yeah.
So,
Number 1.
yeah, number 1 as well.
I thought you hit everything.
Yeah, I thought it.
Hit
So
everything.
okay, I like to take that point. Actually, all these things are not independent. 17 are highly interrelated. If you take, for example, gender inequality, which is number 5, that is very close related to water and
To what? To what?
water and sanitation, close to education, to climate change, poverty. Women are all.
Yeah, that's all fine, but I'm teaching current issues in corporate governance. I'm
Yeah, yeah,
teaching
yeah, yeah, true, true,
very
true.
specific, so
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
bringing it down to something
Yeah,
specific.
but what is important is we should have had a lecture on SDGs and all the interlinks, and then they should have this.
That is
input
what
on
I
everything.
did, Prof. When I
You did a
looked at
wonderful
the
lecture.
general SDGs, of course I gave examples of how these SDGs work, in what area. So that's a very general
Because
lecture.
I did not see that part here. So therefore I thought, oh, she's talking about SDGs, but then
Well, it is SDG, but it's specifically to my unit. Because before that, of course, I have to give a general, because they have to understand what SDG is.
course.
And they have to understand how it works in the world as a whole. So from a macro down to a micro, which is my unit. So, okay, course outcome, do you think I'm hitting anything?
Number 4.
Number 4, and
Number two.
Number 5.
yeah, number 2 and 3, I
Yes.
think is there because
Yeah.
of the debate, the research.
Number 5 as well.
Number 5.
Yeah.
Independent.
Yeah, making to think on your feet and to even looking at innovative solutions in their essays from the research. They talk about maybe quotas is about the way. Maybe we look at other solutions. So possibility.
If I may ask, when I look at your assessment question,
Yeah,
you did ask students to look at other standards, other code of corporate governance.
yeah, locally and internationally.
If I may ask, are they looking at the international code or code of other countries?
International. I didn't bring in other countries because you have been too much.
Right.
So if you look at just international framework, we have the OECD,
Right.
we even have the UN standards.
Right.
So that to the local.
On that note, I
Yeah.
think number 4 is also addressed because Malaysia being a developing country,
Yeah,
you want students definitely would
Yeah.
have made a comparison
yeah,
between the Code of Corporate Governance 2017
yeah,
with the international one
yes,
to see whether we are on par or are we lagging behind.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah. And the issues that
Yes.
come
yes.
about. Yes. Okay, what about the graduate attributes? Are we hitting anything?
Yeah, number 1 is definitely because they're looking at international Code of Corporate Governance.
Number 4.
Number 4.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I think
Yes.
here
Bit of number
we are
3.
looking at SDGs and the ethical side to it. And stuff. So yeah, so this is my what I tried to do in my small unit. Okay, any questions? Yeah.
Comment.
Yeah.
I have 2 comments.
Yeah.
One is I think there are many ways
Yeah.
to apply SDGs,
Yeah.
either in a very focused way or in a general way, either embedded in the assessment
Yeah.
or through the lecturer him or herself, the way he or her self-conduct and the kind of practices you have in the classroom. So there are many ways actually, but it's about ideas,
Yeah.
trying to generate ideas on how to embed the SDG. Secondly, I think one of the most common comments about the prime or embedding SDG is the unit itself,
Yeah.
because I think some units are much easier to
Yes.
embed SDGs
Yes.
as compared to other units.
Yeah.
And if you want to spread, for example, SDGs to typically quantitative type of units,
Yeah.
that's where you really need the ideas. For those of us from qualitative units like marketing, management, it's probably easier. But when you talk about the quantitative, quantitative units,
Yeah.
you have to provide
Yes. Yeah.
workshops,
Yeah.
and you have to engage with the lecturers, the
Yeah.
CEs, to think of an idea of how to embed the different SDGs.
Yeah, I agree with you because I was talking to Dr. Tiago from Econometrics when I was doing the mapping, and he was like, our unit is all about data. It's about methods, data. So we thought about it. Then we looked at the SDGs. Then I said, but are you trying to use the data for any of these purposes? Then he was able to, we were able to look at it and say, yeah, my questions relate to housing. My questions relate to poverty using the data for this. So yeah, quantitative I think it's a bit tricky, but I think you still can, and you in the sense that how you use the data for the end solution or
So
something like that.
probably lecturers who are from those kind of units
Yeah.
need help,
Yeah.
on how to trigger ideas
Yeah.
and thoughts and
Yeah.
use
I
it.
agree.
Maybe the whole school for maybe we should have maybe 2 or 3 lectures on sustainable for everybody here in the school. So then you can take up those issues within the subjects. But when you're trying to explain it in the context of your subject,
Yep.
you can't do much about that because sustainable development goals are a very important issue, big issue.
Yep.
I can see it everywhere.
Yep.
But then probably have 2 or 3 lectures given by somebody who's very competent for everybody in the school. And then you can take over some of those things into then people will know, they know the context then.
Yeah,
You know.
but if you read it, I think you already know the context, because then you take it to your own discipline, you look at your own units,
No,
and
no.
you see how you can, relate it to the SDG.
So I'm saying not to the staff, but to students.
Yeah,
Students,
Yeah,
we are
yeah.
not doing this to the students.
Yeah.
The students must know what SDG is. And if you have a very good presentation of, let's say, 3 hours or so on all these different things for all the students, then when you talk about SDG 5 or whatever, they already know it. It's easier.
And yeah.
First of all, Priya, thank you for an engaging presentation.
You're welcome.
I think what you've done in the class is wonderful. My question pertains specifically to the debate
Yeah.
as an assessment method.
Yeah.
I would like to know how you award marks for the students in terms of participation, because you would have 6 debaters, but you also have students who did
Researchers.
the research and help with the debaters. So, in
Okay.
terms of marks allocation, how did you go about it, especially in ensuring that the marks awarded?
Are fair.
Yes.
Okay, so well, even the debaters did research. Had done research. So to be fair to everybody, the allocation of marks was across the board 10%. I based it on research. Those who debated and volunteered for the debate, they got their gifts. They won. They won the vouchers. They gained the experience, and it was purely voluntary. So I left that for them to take back. So
On the same matter,
yeah.
like you said, you had like 24 of them and then you
Yeah.
separated
Yeah.
them to do the research.
Yeah.
How do you ensure that all of them contribute? How do you know whether...
Well, they had to email to the debater, and they had to email it to
Each
me.
one of
Each
them?
one of them.
Oh, it's not in a group.
No, each one of them had to email it to me. So I'm touching base with everything that's coming to me.
Everybody got 10 marks, 10%, each
No,
one of them.
Yeah, so I allocated 10 marks, but depending on how what the material is and how convincing the argument is, it's like assessing an essay. Yeah, so that's how I assessed it.
And then the debaters?
The debaters did their research as well, so they gave a piece as well.
Okay.
So the assessment 10% was across the board on that 500 to 600 words. As to the skill and everything, they want things, so I left that on its own. So to be consistent across the board.
And as you said, they volunteered.
They
right?
volunteered, yeah. Everything was purely voluntary, which was fantastic because I've never seen a class like that.
If you don't mind me asking, what was your class size?
30. So I had 6 debaters, 24 researchers, and it all fit. Yeah.
This is interesting to get them to come for lecture. It's it's difficult. But
Yes.
I actually went for that debate team
Yes.
sections and all
Yeah.
that.
Then they went for the practice session. I had some pictures of them practicing with the debating society. And so one of the adjudicators was also the Monash debate president. So he gave tips on debating, and he said why this team won and that team didn't, and overuse of statistics and that kind of thing. So that's why I got that comment about using of
The
statistics.
keynote speaker, did she refer to SDGs at all, or
Yes.
just talking about the...
No, she referred to as the gender equality. She referred to the Malaysian Code of Corporate Governance. She referred to women directors and what is happening out there. Why is there a lack of women directors? Because she's a woman director herself. So we had the practical side of it, which is really good. So students were very aware of why is it that there's a lack. The lack of support, the lack of mentors, the lack of avenues. And TP is also in the 30% Women Directors Club. So he had a lot to contribute as well. So I thought it was a very rich, engaging session instead of just a one-way lecture.
The education aspect you did very well. I mean,
Okay.
not only just the mapping as well, but also resources on campus. You use the debating team,
Yeah.
use our industry board members.
The education
and,
of
The education office, Laidu, Malvin, Chia,
That's one of the things.
everybody came together.
There's a lot of resources available.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you did that part. I have an issue with the SDG.
Okay.
The reason is because we are promoting gender equality,
Yes.
but the outcome of the debate
Yeah.
went against that.
Yeah.
So, what is the student's perception in saying, no, okay, then the SDG doesn't matter then?
You see, that is the environment a university needs to have, if you ask me. We need to have if you talk about inclusivity, it's about people with different perspectives, different opinions. So if I had done this in class and just given them this and asked them questions, all of them would have just sit there and said, yeah, gender equality is important. I wanted to know, what do you actually think? Question, reflect, challenge status quo. So that's when I asked them to think. That's why I chose this debate. So what my aim was to have a robust discussion. It doesn't mean that they will come out thinking gender equality doesn't matter. It could be that. It could be that, it could not be that. But that is a consequence of having such a robust discussion. But I would not worry about that, because a lot of it is also for the sake of argument. So now that they are against, they have to look at this perspective, because otherwise nobody would have looked at the perspective of gender diversity does not. Nobody would have picked up the issue of meritocracy. Where does it stand? Nobody would have looked up at the other side. Everybody would have just said, yes, it's important, okay, we just argue. So I think having a competing viewpoint is important. And I think that they will leave the debate having both perspectives, although they have to argue one. Okay, so I think it is a rich perspective to have, and not just one-sided.
Probably after the debate, I mean, it's would have asked everyone
Yeah.
to give their voting.
Yeah,
To see.
or whether it matters.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good.
So to see an
Yeah.
impact,
Moving
whether
forward.
if let's
Yeah,
say 90%
moving
says
forward,
yes, then
yeah.
you have a record.
Yeah.
Say that, yeah. So but then
Does it matter,
people
does it not
going with
matter?
the double-minded
Also, if you repeat this say with another group, you might get
You
a
will get
different
another
result.
results.
Yes.
You might get a different result. But
It's
that's
just
a
the
whole.
context of that experiment. It's an experiment only.
It's an
So
experiment.
therefore, you can get the result. You repeat that and you get a different result.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you do it 100 times, and if 90% of the time you get wrong, then that is the right conclusion.
Yeah, so see, that's an experiment. See, but what I wanted was, do your research, go and look at different opinions, and don't just take one word for it. You have to have different
I think
perspectives.
it's not the results, the process.
Yes,
Yes, the process.
exactly.
Yeah.
That was my aim. It was the process rather than the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then you don't want to leave them with a perception, because that's a perception. So they need to be confident.
No,
in
of
what
course
they-
not. Because you see, the industry speaker had her impact already. So she came in and showed why it matters. You see, so she set the tone. So that was the best part about the keynote speaker. She came in, she set the tone. She's a woman director. Her challenges, issues she faced. Why is it important? Why is the quota important? Because they were arguing it's not important. Why is it important? What are you doing with the quota? You're not just basically giving, letting women come on board just to fulfill the quota. What is the purpose of the quota? What's the idea behind it? So she came in and set things straight. So I feel that's the contribution of the industry speaker, pretty much.